So, good afternoon, everyone. And before we get started, I would like to um, just invite everyone to the upcoming discussion by Dr. Vanas James on the National Economic Review. So, those who are actually on the island, I invite you to please RSVP to Channel 5 that you will be in attendance at the meeting. For those who are not on the island, I am not too sure whether it will be broadcast at the same time or whether it would be a delayed broadcast. So we will let you know uh, better when we are given the information. So again, let's come out and have that discussion. Thank you. So, okay, 1 minute, please. Okay. Okay. Um, all right. So again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's edition of the Tobago Legislative Series. I am Dr. Denise Soyafat-Angus, your host for tonight's discussion, a timely and deeply necessary one. Tonight, we confront the pressing issue that strikes at the heart of law, ethics, and public trust in our institutions. The case involving Mr. Hanif Benjamin has been quite public, and the troubling charges of sexual misconduct. But beyond the allegations themselves lies a broader question. How did our institutions respond? Was the Tobago House of Assembly's silence, lack of action, or failure to publicly clarify their position reflective of due process, um, or even um, what steps have been taken regarding policies in going forward in a situation like this, or a troubling pattern of avoidance? As a society, we often speak of justice, transparency, and accountability. But when issues like these arise, especially involving individuals in public roles, our response becomes a test of our institutional maturity and moral compass. To help us unpack these complex legal, ethical, and governance questions, we are honored to yet again welcome our distinguished guest, Mr. Clyde Weatherhead, a seasoned attorney at law with decades of experience navigating the intersections of law, justice, and civil society. Mr. Weatherhead is known for his fearless engagement with national issues and his commitment to democratic integrity, both in the courtroom and in the public square. So he will begin with a 20 to 30-minute presentation, after which we will open the floor for your comments, questions, and reflections. As always, the TLS platform is here to foster dialogue, deepen understanding, and ultimately strengthen our democratic fabric. Thank you once again for joining us. Let's begin. Mr. Weatherhead, all over to you.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone, and thanks again, Doc, for having me. This development is certainly not particularly new, but it is new in the sense that it is not very often that we have public officials facing criminal charges. Now, the fact is that Mr. Benjamin currently holds an office in the Tobago House of Assembly, and not an elected office, but he is on contract. So it takes us back again to the question of the public service, public servants, the question of contract employees in the public service, and how the law treats them, how industrial relations theory and practice in our country treats them. And when it comes to the question of misconduct, how is that to be treated? By the employer, by the police, by the state. The public service has within it public officers, that is, the holders of public offices within several services. The civil service, the police service, the teaching service, the prison service, the fire service, and the THA. Public offices are held by public officers who are appointed by a service commission. And they hold office. The terms of employment are negotiated between recognized associations in most cases and the chief personnel officer on behalf of the government. In the public service, there are many people now who are on contract. In the civil service, in some ministries and departments, there are upwards of 70% of the persons we meet in those institutions who are not public servants, who are not public officers, but who are contract employees. The contract employees are, under the Industrial Relations Act, defined as workers. Public officers are not defined as workers, along with employees of the central bank. Public officers hold public office, and their employer is nominally the CPO for purposes of terms and conditions, and they fall under the Service Commission, which has 5 areas of jurisdiction. One is appointment, one is promotion, 3 is transfer, 4 is discipline, and 5 is termination. Those are the powers of the service commissions. Contract employees are employed by heads of department or permanent secretaries in ministries. And in the THA, they would fall under the administrator of the THA. There have been several matters in the courts, particularly the industrial court, regarding contract employees in the THA and the chief administrator as the employer. Many of those matters have had to deal with questions of whether people are really permanent employees disguised as contract employees, whether people have been properly terminated, and what are the terms and conditions of their employment. The industrial court deals with the disputes between contract employees and their employer. The special tribunal, which is a separate institution, but which is composed of industrial court of members who we loosely call judges. They are called members in the Industrial Relations Act, belonging to the one division of the industrial court. The head of that division is the chairman of the special tribunal, and two other members selected by him make up the rest of the special tribunal. The special tribunal deals with matters that are between the employees and their employer in terms of the CPO. It also deals with matters in relation to public officers, in relation to those matters that fall under the CPO and in its engagement with the recognized associations on behalf of those public officers. The Service Commission and its 5 areas of jurisdiction, any dispute in those areas of appointments, transfer, promotions, discipline, termination, do not go to the industrial court or the special tribunal. Those matters are dealt with in the civil courts. So the question that has arisen is that there is a contract employee of the THA who is now facing a criminal charge. So what kind of general guidelines are there in relation to public employees employed by the government, employed by the THA, who are public officers, and which may be applicable to those who are on contract? Particularly where the issue is that in a contract, the contract employee is subject to disciplinary procedures in relation to misconduct. Misconduct in the public service is not decided by the Service Commission. It is decided as a term and condition of employment that is negotiated between the Chief Personnel Officer and the recognized associations. Many years ago, the Privy Council made it clear in the seminal case of Endell Thomas and the Attorney General that the definition of misconduct is a matter for the executive, meaning that that branch of the human resource function in the public service, which is the chief personnel officer, needs to negotiate those terms with the recognized associations. Contract employees' terms and conditions are to be negotiated between the employee and the chief personnel officer. Many times, those contracts are silent. And what applies is, in principle, the practices of the public service in such situations. You all may know some contract employee in the THA who may be on a 3-year contract or a second 3-year contract, but has not even had the first contract in writing from the CPO. So the CPO now has certain general terms of contract employment. And those general terms include the question of how the question of misconduct may be treated and the question of termination. So contract employees being workers under the IRA, there is also guidance in the decisions of the industrial court in respect of situations like the situation involving Mr. Benjamin. There are many cases that have been dealt with in the industrial court in relation to workers facing criminal charges and how the employer is to address that situation. Workers facing criminal charges are not automatically guilty of misconduct and are not automatically charged with misconduct. Public officers facing criminal proceedings, and this issue came up recently in the situation of Commissioner of Police Ulla Thomas, Ulla Harewood, sorry, when she was being investigated and arrested, though not charged. And we were told that a very fashionable term of art of the United States was applied to her. We were told she was sent on administrative leave by the Police Service Commission when she was arrested. So the relevant regulation of the Public Service Commission in situations where there are criminal proceedings or there are disciplinary proceedings for his dismissal of a public officer is Regulation 89, which says where there have been or are about to be instituted against an officer, have been or are about to disciplinary proceedings for his dismissal or criminal proceedings. And where the commission is of the opinion that the public interest requires that that officer should forthwith cease to perform the functions of his office, the commission shall interdict him from such performance. An officer so interdicted may be permitted to receive such proportion of his pay of his office, not being less than one half, as the commission may determine. So if a public officer has been or is about to be facing criminal proceedings, and in Ulla Christopher's case, the question came up, what are criminal proceedings? When do they begin? Do they begin with an arrest or do they begin with a charge? So in this particular case, there is a criminal charge. So there is criminal proceedings that have been or are about to be instituted. The worker has appeared in court already and is on bail. The industrial court has ruled many times that where workers face charges, if the employer considers that the fact that they face a criminal charge may be bringing the organization by which they are employed into disrepute and so on, the employer may bring a disciplinary charge against the worker. In the public service, this regulation 89 or alternatively regulation 88, which deals with suspension by the commission, but 88 does not specifically deal with criminal proceedings. So the more relevant one is 89. The question then is, what should happen to an employee, whether they are a worker on contract or a public officer of the THA, employed by the THA, who faces criminal charges? Well, should Regulation 89 apply? Well, not directly, because Regulation 89 deals with public officers and is an action of a service commission. And as a contract employee, Mr. Benjamin does not fall under a commission. But the kind of possibility that 89 suggests is that he may be interdicted or suspended while facing those charges. Interestingly, the UNC government under Mr. Basil Pandey, who was himself a trade union leader, amended the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago to say that any public officer, civil servant, teacher, anybody, policeman, THA, any public officer in the THA, who is found guilty of a criminal charge is automatically guilty of misconduct. So workers in the private sector, or even workers within the public sector, WASA workers, etc., if they are on a criminal charge and they are found guilty, they may be put on a disciplinary charge thereafter. But the amendment to the Constitution by the Pandey government makes it automatic that once a public officer is found guilty of any criminal offense in any criminal court, they are automatically guilty of misconduct. And the Constitution says they must then say to the commission under which they are appointed why they should not be terminated. So they automatically get guilty of misconduct. The question is, should the penalty be termination? Over the years, I have had to deal with several of those kinds of situations. In one case, there was a teacher he and his neighbor were having some dispute over where their boundary should fall. And one claiming the other one built his fence on their property and so on. And it ended up in some reached to blows and so on. And the teacher was found guilty of a criminal offense. So he had to tell the Teaching Service Commission why he should not be dismissed. In another case, a cleaner in the Ministry of Agriculture had an altercation with a tenant in her apartment building, and they reached to blows on the staircase, and she was found guilty of a criminal charge. And she had to tell the commission why she should not be terminated. So this automatic guilt of misconduct, once convicted, applies to from top to bottom, literally, for public officers. In this case, being a contract employee, the employer may bring a disciplinary charge of misconduct or bringing the organization into disrepute against the contract employee. But the contract employee is not guilty of anything at this stage. Situation is very sensitive because of the fact that as a director of social services and so on, one of his responsibilities is providing for the protection of children in Tobago. And the charge against him involves a child victim. So that makes it very, very sensitive situation. And in situations where some people may face criminal charges, for example, stealing from the employer, embezzling money, and so on and so on, the employer would not want such a worker to be on their premises to interfere possibly a second time or to interfere with evidence that may be needed and so on. And so as a precaution, the question of suspension arises. In that case, suspension is not a penalty. It is a precaution. So in this case, given the nature of the charge and given the nature of the responsibilities of this contract employee, this director, it would seem to make eminent sense that he should have been immediately, upon being charged with such a criminal offense, to be suspended and removed from carrying out such a function. If for no other reason than to prevent the possibility of a similar situation arising in the course of his being in his employment. So the THA, being his employer, there was a statement from a particular division under which he falls, saying that they have zero tolerance for such situations. And they are very concerned about various nice principles and so on and so on. But they have done nothing. And that they are investigating. If someone is charged by the police, who is investigating? The employer is investigating. Is the employer now the police? This is a police matter, and it is before the court. It is not for the employer to investigate anything. The employer has to decide, should we take a precautionary step to prevent a recurrence of that situation, and to, given the nature of the job of this particular person, to prevent the institution from being brought further into disrepute at this stage. This is not a matter of somebody being convicted. This is a matter that the employer can take precautionary steps to remove him, to protect the interests of the organization. The PNM Tobago Council issued a statement in relation to this matter. And in their statement, they said PNM Tobago demands immediate termination of Hanif Benjamin following serious criminal charges. Immediate termination. The Constitution in relation to public officers says you are guilty of misconduct if you are convicted of a criminal charge, no matter how serious or how not so serious. But the PNM Tobago Council is calling for the immediate termination of an employee because he is charged with a criminal charge, serious as it is. And the statement went on to say, we are calling for the immediate dismissal of Hanif Benjamin, Director of Social Protection, within the Farley Augustine led THA. So would it have been different if the THA was led by somebody else? Following his being formally charged with 2 sexual offenses under the Children's Act. They restate later on in their statement, the PNM Tobago Council therefore demands the immediate termination from any post of Benjamin, from any post within the THA, from any post. A public explanation from the Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine, regarding the process used to hire Benjamin. The implementation of clear, accountable, and transparent hiring practices for all senior positions in the THA, especially in roles involving the care of children and vulnerable citizens. Well, the implementation of clear, accountable, and transparent hiring practices for all positions in the THA should be the practice of the THA. Doesn't matter if the role is involving care of children and so on. In any position, there should be proper hiring practices. But how does that come about on the issue of a particular employee facing a criminal charge? Does how he was hired matter in this situation? In my view, it doesn't matter because the question is not how he was hired. The question is he being employed on contract and facing a criminal charge, what is the employer to do? So as a potential employer, as a political party that may be in the position to run the THA, that has been there for 20 years doing it, the PNM is saying, first step, fire him one time. I issued a post commenting on this position of the PNM and pointing out the question of regulations 88 and 89 and so on. and agreeing that the situation is delicate, it is serious, but the employer needs to act properly. Suppose you go and terminate him because he's charged and then he's not convicted. What are you going to do? You're going to rehire him? You're going to reinstate him? A suspension doesn't require rehiring him or reinstating him in that way. So, having issued that post, the next day on the 12 o'clock news, I heard the minority leader in the THA, who is a representative of the same Tobago Council of the PNM, calling for the suspension of Mr. Benjamin, which is a step down from his THA's, PNM Tobago Council's position. Now that is fine, but this is time passing and the THA has not yet acted, as far as I'm aware. The other thing in the PNM's statement, it goes on, it closes by saying this: the PNM Tobago Council remains committed to ensuring that public service on this island, is guided by integrity, transparency, and above all, the safety and well-being of citizens. And in the course of its statement, it says the hiring of Mr. Benjamin meant that he was handpicked and installed into a sensitive high-level position, bypassing numerous competent and qualified Tobagonians who were never given a fair opportunity to apply or be considered. So is the fact that Mr. Benjamin, not a Tobagonian, an issue? If he were a Tobagonian and charged with the same charge in the same position, would he be needed to be treated differently? And therefore, several persons who have commented on my recent post on this matter have raised the question of whether the PNM is promoting division between Trinidadians and Tobagonians. Now, there was a Tobago self-government bill, and it spoke to the question of a Tobago public service. Is the PNM's position that nobody but Tobagonians are to hold public employment in Tobago? If that is the case, then Tobagonians will be faced with very limited promotional opportunities in employment. Because as big an employer within the Tobago context that the THA is, government employment throughout the country is even bigger. So behind this is also the question of, with Tobago self-government, with autonomy, what is it that will become of the opportunities for upward mobility in public employment for Tobagonians? Is it that Trinidadians are not to be allowed to be employed in Tobago? There's a lot of talk about this unitary state and how we are one country and you can't talk secession and all this kind of story. But if we are one country with two nations in it, are people from one nation to be denied opportunity in the other? Are people to be limited in their possibility of employment development because they belong to one or the other? And those matters are there. The question of someone holding the kind of office that Mr. Benjamin holds in Tobago and the nature of the charge which he faces is a serious matter. It also raises the question, and some people have tried to make a noise about this, that in the hiring practices, because he was also head of the Insurance Authority, he was a very senior person. Can an employer interviewing somebody for a job determine whether that person is likely to commit a criminal offense if they do not have a criminal record? Are employers now to somehow become seer men and seer women and decide that this person may become a criminal later on? They might be an embezzler or something, we don't know. But how can you determine that in the absence of objective information? So Mr. Benjamin, of his own accord, if he himself subscribes to the notion of integrity and so on, could say to the THA, given the situation, I resign. There have been many calls over the years. I've seen a call today for Senator Alwari to step down from the Senate because a judge today sent a matter to the DPP to determine if there was fraud in the renewing of CPEP contracts close to the election. So immediately there's a call, I'm not sure by whom, for him to step down. So if he's stepping down, it means he would have to voluntarily depart. Similarly, if Mr. Benjamin considers himself to be not as important as the position he holds, he can voluntarily depart. If he has leave inside and so on, he can take his leave. But more importantly, if integrity is an issue, then his employer should act to protect the institution. This is not about the individual. This is about the institution. This is about his role, a role which was given to him by his employer. He didn't hire himself. So on the one extreme, you have the PNM calling for his immediate dismissal. And then to some extent, at least the minority leader retreating from that a bit, saying, well, he should be suspended. He should not be there. And on the other hand, you have the THA who hired him, who gave him his position, who gave him his duties. And this criminal matter impacts so much on his duties that in the interest of the institution and in the interest of the public, the employer needs to act. If any of those actions are taken by the THA, with respect to removing Mr. Benjamin from his position on suspension while the matter proceeds in the court, then they would be acting proactively in the interest of the public and the institution. This is not a situation where the THA should sit in glum silence as though this is something happening somewhere else in Tobago or somewhere else in the world. This is one of their employees, and a very senior one at that, in a very sensitive position. I have heard that Mr. Benjamin enjoys certain privileges, that as a contract employee, he is supposed, based on the terms of his contract, to give his full attention to the performance of his job. In many contract positions in the public service, people have not been able to take leave, even if their contract is 3 years, because of the nature of the positions they hold. And because the government has to pay them for that leave at the end of the contract, the government has basically taken a policy position in recent years to say, listen, contract employees should use up all their leave before the termination, the end of their contract period. So, Mr. Benjamin, I understand, is in a privileged position that he's not even required to give his full attention to the performance of his job in Tobago, so that he doesn't even run afoul of the issue of not taking his leave and having to be paid for it or stuff like that at the end of the contract. I am told that he works in Tobago 3 days a week and he engages in private practice in Trinidad the 2 other days of the working week. If that is so, he's in a privileged position and he didn't give himself that privilege. Again, his employer would have given him that privilege. But that should not stop his employer from dealing properly, proactively with the situation that he finds himself in at this point in time. And the THA needs to act. And the PNM needs to stop behaving like a lynch mob. If everybody who is charged should be terminated from their job, where will that, if you did that, where will that end? Then anybody who is charged with a serious um, criminal charge that involves violence, then we should just form ourselves into lynch mobs and hang them. Is that what the PNM is proposing? Is that what the Tobago Council of the PNM, the head of which is a deputy political leader of the PNM National Party, are they saying that this is the PNM's position as a political party? Well, certainly they're saying it in Tobago. Are they also now binding their national party to that position? So the ethical issues behind this involve Mr. Benjamin. Should he do the proper thing and remove himself, given the nature of the charges he faces? Should his employer do the proactive thing and remove him? And should those who want to talk about ethics on the other opposition side be calling for lynch mob activity in Tobago? So they all need to look in the mirror and make some decisions about what to do. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Clyde. And certainly we can always count on you to bring all perspectives to the table. I want to let you know that the IDA called for his termination based on the fact of broken public trust and bringing, ill repute to the institution in which he is working and is a very senior official. And so those were the grounds upon which we said termination was in order, because this is an institution, the division is one that treats with the vulnerable. And that is where you need public trust so that people feel, um, okay to come in and seek the services that they need at this time. So those were the
Certainly,
grounds
but
that we
would
chose
people
to
feel
say.
less safe if he's on suspension and not there?
I don't know, suspension or
And
whatever
and
his
his contract of
is.
employment
Mm-hmm.
does not allow for his summary dismissal, which his termination would be, amount to in that way. If if he's facing a criminal charge amongst the misconduct, then he has to have, just as in the criminal court, he has to have due process in relation to his employment.
Well, they do whatever is necessary to bring it to a close. Yeah. But just allowing him to continue like that without, uh, you know, without doing anything about it or without saying anything sufficient about it, because their press release pretty much said nothing. That is totally unacceptable. It's
Well,
unacceptable. So let me open the floor to everyone at this time. You can have your say, you can ask questions for clarity, make your contribution. We have a silent crowd tonight, guys. Come on. Okay.
Further, I want to thank you for the bit of information that you have shared so far. It leads me to wonder the various responses we have had to the issue, whether those of us, and I would say it like that, those of us in governance at this point in time are truly aware of the rules of engagement that they need to work with in managing the society in which we live and the various institutions that are critical part of a society like Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago. Are we really fully aware? And I'm taking this into the realm a bit of political. We oftentimes propose leaders for whatever reason, whether it's based on popularity or whatever. But when they get in there, they don't seem to get themselves, they didn't make themselves ready before getting in there. And when they get in there, they are not very familiar with the rules and the regulations that they need to operate with to ensure that the institutions that we have function appropriately. Um, and it's an area, I think, of serious concern from the point of leadership, when leadership is not even fully aware of its powers and its responsibility in guiding and governing a society. And I think that what you just shared in terms of the varying responses from the different parties and I use parties or entities concern, is an area of grave concern if we were to truly be unbiased and have the governance of the society really at the heart of the issue. So I see that as an area of tremendous concern.
Well, let me say this. What you have raised is an issue I have raised before in discussions like this on this forum and elsewhere. It is the question of political education. Political education is not Eric Williams getting up in the square and delivering a lecture. Political parties have responsibilities. They are organizations that are saying, we are vying to be the next party in office or to be the party that remains in office. And one of their duties is to educate their members and the potential candidates that they wish to put up in an election and to hold positions in the mechanisms of government. I was so happy that one party of the several in the last general election did not even save their deposits, because this party put out an ad basically inviting people, in fact, more than one did it, inviting people who want to run for election to come and be candidates for this party. And there was more than one that acted in that way. Those people, if I feel I want to be a minister, I want to be an MP, and such a party makes that call, and I really, man, I want some bigger money, I want to hold a big post, I will go and volunteer. I'd have no allegiance to that party. There's no idea of what I understand governance to mean, what my role would be in that position, and so on. And the others, the so-called major ones, are selecting people who they feel could win. Whether they winning means that they can actually carry out the role of proper governance and acting properly in situations like this. So part of the responsibility for what you are speaking of, Miss, is with the political parties and the question of the general education of the population in terms of politics, in terms of governance, etc. And the THA cannot claim to be ignorant of things. There are many cases in the industrial court involving the THA. So anybody in the THA in elected positions should have familiarized themselves, and the chief administrator, if the elected people didn't familiarize themselves, should make sure that they have become familiar with the principles that come out of those matters.
Definitely. I hope this becomes a kind of wake-up call, since we have an impending THA election upon us, for all those who are desirous of being representatives to understand the seriousness of what they are embarking upon and the responsibility that they owe to the society they are putting themselves forward to lead.
Hello?
Yes. Kishon, I'll let you go in a minute. I want to say thank you to Clyde for your endorsement at in your response, because this is why we have continued to have this program functioning for the last 3 years to expose our potential candidates to all types of discussions from, subject matter experts, because, you have to widen your knowledge and your vision through these types of conversations to understand what exactly that you're getting into and what scenarios you can be facing, and therefore you are wiser now in terms of how we can act. So thank you for that. Kishon?
Yeah, good night everyone.
Good
I
night.
have the part where the brother said a while that they like with the party that take up people and thing and put them in power where not really relative. You understand where I'm coming from? Like no popular figure now. You understand? Hello?
Yes, go ahead. We
Yeah,
hear you.
you know what I'm talking about, right? Like a normal person they put wherever they call for power or them thing, right? I have because everybody have a chance to represent wherever they want to because it's a free country. You could take whatever person, whoever wants the person qualified, they have a chance. Right? So at that part there I do agree with him when he said that. Because everybody, no matter you have to be a big popular man or whoever, right? But to me point again back now to the point that the integrity commissioner, that part there, because you hear the word integrity, and I think that office there do not play a big role. They don't play a big role. They don't you like they just did. They not really punish people or do whatever they do it more. I find that just they're just taking up space and they don't do their work plenty because you're not seeing nobody getting jail and again seeing nobody getting really investigation. You only like I remember I was little that time there. I was a young man at that time going like primary school, and I remember when Pandy went to jail and he well, 2 or 3 weeks he was in jail and because of his health he come up back and they say nobody never after that go to jail or all accountability of thing and that part with the integrity commissioner, integrity and not commissioner, but integrity department, I find they need to play a bigger role than just okay, we're gonna investigate and thing and that is it and nothing not coming out of it. They see nobody like the assets take away that they can't buy a lawyer to defend us and that kind of way. Because in America and in places they seize your assets, this and you have to defend yourself like a normal person and them things. So if they really put the brunt on the law and really take accountability and stuff because with the DPP and all them things, it do if none of them not really making like an effort to put down their foot, it not gonna work. It's just gonna be over and over like where in Tobago we just say spinning top in mud, and we don't getting no progress and things just normal as and that is my concern. Where I find like with that Benjamin for honesty because and if you have integrity, you're supposed to be able to know under investigation so and so thing. I need to step down, clear my name, thing, and but nobody don't have that. People just think, yeah, wherever if they take me down in the hard way, yeah, they take me down in the hard way, but they're not taking the integrity of to character that, hey, I have a name, this, and they don't step in on to investigate, to clear your name, and then after you come back. So that my concern about that they need to book up on that either the Prime Minister present or the Prime Minister before they need to do that in thing because people didn't have like have they know that so and so in this and on that investigation, they still have them in the party. And then kind of seeing. So it not really showing like you're honorable, you're not think God honorable is a big title. That's a yeah, that's a big title, and that's my concern that the Integrity Commission need to do a better work than what they're doing, and the civil court to right that situation too. They need to really take that on charge, and once that in place, I think everything will run smooth because people wouldn't take like like it's a puppet to just a normal thing. Because it's just like you get the seatbelt, if you know that you drive without seatbelt, you have to pay $1,000. Nobody want to pay $1,000 to get on those things. So it's like that. If the hard punishment and responsibility, I think that will work. But nobody will take responsibility. It just like helter skelter, it just up in the air.
Thank you for
That's
that
my
contribution. Thank you
conversation.
so much,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Kishon.
Could I say
Said
this,
a number of
Kishon?
things. I'll turn it over to Clyde to respond.
Kishon, two things. You said you disagreed with me as though I was suggesting that some people should not have the right to run for office. That is furthest from what I suggest. I said if a political party simply advertises, if you're interested in office, come by us and you could be a candidate. That is the height of irresponsibility of the political party. Individuals like Mr. Benjamin, like you, like me, we also have a personal responsibility in respect of any kind of representative situation or any kind of putting ourselves out there to possibly be in a position of responsibility or governance, to have ourselves understand what it means, what it requires, and what we must bring to it. So running for office is not just a competition in terms of popularity. It is a question of taking up a serious national responsibility in terms of governance and office. The Integrity Commission cannot do what the law does not allow it to do. The Integrity Commission, that piece of legislation has been discussed left, right, and center all over this country for the last umpteen years since it was passed. And every time there's a discussion, people say, oh, the commission needs to have more teeth, and so on and so on. Take the situation of the Police Complaints Authority, which is given an authority outside of the police service to investigate police misconduct, serious misconduct, and police actions in terms of these kind of extrajudicial killings that have reached 48 already for this year. And today, you know what the commissioner of police says? He said the PCA needs to understand that the police should be investigating their own. He sounds like he's so far back in history at times that how can we have moved away from the police policing themselves. We created an organization called the PCA. The PCA has been clamoring for stronger powers for itself. But to give it more powers, that act also has to change. So the Integrity in Public Life Act, the PCA Act, and several other pieces of legislation need to be strengthened to strengthen the governance organs of this society. But who has to strengthen it? It is the 41 people in the lower house and those others in the upper house who have to make those decisions. It is the same politicians who have to make those decisions. So we out here, based on your concern, we have to make the concerns known. We have to organize and demand those changes that are necessary. Because good governance is important to every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago.
For real. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Hello?
Yes, Kishon.
Yeah, I understand what you said. Yeah, I agree with him when he said that yeah, with the representative and I didn't catch it first, but how you explaining it now, I understand where you're coming from. So yeah, but I saw that too with the
Yeah, good
with
evening.
I saw the part with the
Yes, Patrick,
commissioner.
I'll take you next. Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I saw the part with the commissioner. We was talking about the policing their own and stuff, and I didn't agree with that one. So because yeah, we need to step more stronger legislation and stuff. We said that yeah to really to give them, as you said, teeth and stuff to
Right.
bite
Okay,
into it. Yeah. So
thanks,
thanks very much.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
Patrick.
Yeah, good evening. Just the last point that someone had made about the people thing. How can a people raise their voice and let it be heard outside of a political party in this environment, right? They don't seem to have people doesn't seem to have any voice or anything or to let it be heard outside of a party structure and that sort of organization. And you're talking about teeth, or if you don't have teeth, maybe you should get some dentures or something. But but the issue I gather the issue here is whether or not uh Mr. Benjamin should be terminated or self-resign. All right.
Or he could be
The
Or
suspended by his
optics
employer,
suspended.
sir.
Or suspended.
or suspend. All right. The optics, I gather that it hasn't done that. The optics of this thing isn't good, right? And the THA should take some responsibility here. But what is the process for doing that? My understanding is that you get some court documents uh, stating the charges and whatnot, and then that is forwarded to Service Commission. I don't know if that situation applies to contract workers,
No, it
but
does
if
not. It does
the
not.
thing and then the service, it does
It
not.
does not.
So
It
the
does not.
THA,
The
so the
THA
THA has the
is the
sole.
employer of a contract employee, not the Service Commission. Okay?
Okay,
And the
so they have the
THA
sole responsibility.
and the THA, according to his contract as his employer, is responsible for treating with any breach of contract on his part or any misconduct. Nobody else, the THA.
Now, one might argue misconduct in office or out of office. Was that misconduct in office?
Doesn't
Misconduct is
matter.
misconduct, sir. if
And then
if you try to bring this thing about in office or out of office, where does the term bringing your organization into disrepute come from? Only by doing something inside? It doesn't come from there. It could be outside, inside. And that is the call of the employer to deal with the situation. The one
yes,
thing the employer cannot do is simply sit down there, fold their arms, and say, well, we believe in these lofty principles, and that is it. We don't talk.
innocent until proven guilty. The ethics isn't good, but I noticed there was to me a conflation of issues here. Whether you are elected or on contract, why you think you should use that analogy uh, to strengthen your point? Using an elected representative and a contract worker. Why I don't get the annexes.
I didn't make that comparison, sir. I compared civil servant public officers with contract employees, not elected officials. Elected officials are not employees.
Are they?
No, sir.
I thought they were employees of the people.
We could use the nice lofty terms, but in terms of employment law, industrial relations, they are not employees. That's why in the US, you can be impeached. Similarly, in Trinidad and Tobago, under our constitution, the president can be impeached. It is not a
So,
question of if if
so
if the if the constitution said that I could fire the president, or we could fire the president as the people, then they would be our employees. When there was a proposal under the PP government to introduce the right of recall, that is the closest we could come to being able to fire our elected representatives.
An item for to be added in the constitutional reform thing that they're thinking about?
No, that was since 2015.
What do you think we should be contemplating?
Well, the
The
thing
right to
is,
recall.
both the UNC and the PNM have refused to do it.
Okay, yeah, but the optics of this.
And when you say just now, sir, that the only way we could have a voice is inside a political party, if that were true, then we would be a very sad society, you know.
But it's already sad, guys.
We as citizens have a right to know, we have a right to decide. We should be the people deciding who candidates are in an election. Not some party sit down and say, we have screening. What is screening? That they're selecting somebody who could do the bidding of their party better than somebody else. That is not the purpose of being elected, sir. Being elected is to represent. A man going into the lower house of the parliament is called a parliamentary representative. In the THA, these people are elected to represent a particular district and so on and so on. They're not there to be ministers and secretaries, you know. They're there to be representatives in the first place. So if we have no authority over them and we have no voice outside of a political party, then we are not citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We are just dummies here to do their bidding. And that cannot be acceptable to us as citizens at all. In 1970, nobody was a member of a political party to demand that the promises that weren't fulfilled should be fulfilled in terms of coming out of independence. The young people of this country stood up and made a demand. The problem is that not even the trade union movement right now could make any demand because several of the leaders have compromised themselves precisely by becoming part of a political organization that is not representative of the workers. How many people have been dismissed in the last few weeks by the present government? But the trade union movement can't say boo because they have two people sitting down in the cabinet there. And and a third one is the Minister of Labor and can't say boo. But they are trade union leaders. Basdev Pandey was a trade union leader, became the prime minister, and then went and amend the constitution to say something contrary to all the industrial relations practices and decisions of the courts, etc., by saying that if a public officer is found guilty of a criminal charge, no matter how serious or not serious, any old charge, they are automatically guilty of misconduct. So they have no right to due process. That is what Pandey did. So if we give up our right to speak, then we will become a very sad society. We will become what became of the Germans under the Nazi rule.
I don't see in this present paradigm where that voice of the people can be raised outside some collaborated, organized structure, right? We're so fragmented as a people. I think we are in serious problems. But I'll leave it for someone else.
If I may interject a little bit, that is where civil society needs to organize itself as civil groups outside of political groups. Politics is one type of civil group, but it's not the only one. And there's room for the society, the average man, to be involved in a civic and a civil grouping where it can champion its voice, and champion its voice loud enough that makes political parties take notice of. So the political party is not the only vehicle through which we as citizens can raise our voices. It's just one. And probably in this particular time of our history as a nation, fighting for different sort of levels of self-determination and autonomy, the voice of the average citizen through civil society needs to be heard even more loudly. And therefore, we as individuals have a greater responsibility to ourselves to create the kind of vehicles that may give us that sort of voice beside just a political voice.
You are absolutely correct, my lady.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Key. Is there anyone else who would like to make a contribution at this time?
The other issue that might have been of interest to me, because I heard it come up on this thing about sub judice. Does that matter arise in things like that? Because people seem to be afraid to broach the topic. How does that factor into a matter like this, if any?
Sub judice means the matter is under a process of the court. All right? If you speak on the matter in such a way as to try to interfere with the process of the court, then you would be violating the jurisdiction of the court, and you are not to do that. The issue here, the court is involved in dealing with a criminal charge against Mr. Benjamin. That is one situation. Mr. Benjamin is employed by the THA. That's another situation. So the THA dealing with Mr. Benjamin as an employee has nothing to do with the court matter, in the sense of that is not going to influence whether he is found innocent or guilty based on the evidence in a trial in the criminal court. The employer has a particular responsibility. The employer doesn't have to pronounce on whether they think he's guilty or not, or to imply it, as the PNM has done in the Tobago Council statement. Well, we should fire him one time. They are assuming he's guilty. So you can't interfere with the court process. That is what the sub judice situation is about. But the employer has a responsibility with respect to the employee, and the people of Tobago have a right to say to the employer, listen, this situation ain't right. A man in that position should not be dealing with us in facing that kind of situation, in that kind of responsibility that he has. So we think he should not be there while this matter is being determined in the court. In fact, they shouldn't even have to say that. The employer should say that on their behalf.
Hello, good evening. Akil here.
Hi, Akil.
Hi, good night. Sorry for dropping in late, but nevertheless, I endeavor to not miss these meetings. Brother Clyde, I heard you mention that Basio Pandit did something with respect to, I don't know if it was a law that he made or was it a suggestion that he came up with.
No, it was an amendment to the Constitution.
Okay, was it ascended?
Pardon?
Was it ascended?
Yes, people have been told they're guilty of misconduct because they found guilty in a criminal court and have to tell the commission why they should not be sent home. Many people, since around 2000, whatever year it was, the amendment was made.
So they're going contrary to the law.
Well, they're going contrary to the spirit of the law. People are entitled to due process.
But the word that you use from Basio Pandey is that we're found guilty. So if you're found guilty, then you know.
You're found guilty of a criminal offense in a
Offense,
criminal
yeah.
court. That is separate from your relationship with your employer. And as I pointed out, if you look at all the industrial court cases with people in those situations who are workers, the company, the employer has to make a decision. If you are found guilty of a criminal offense, it may be something so trivial that the employer don't even consider it to be misconduct. But if they consider it to be misconduct, they bring a charge against you and they have their own internal process to deal with that misconduct charge. That is a separate thing from the criminal process.
Right. That is understood. But seeing that we have it, how does it really take effect when we have public officials employed by the state representing the people being found guilty of misconduct? And apparently, in some cases, they are skirting the law.
Which public officials you talking about elected found guilty of misconduct? Which misconduct? You know, the NAR tried to introduce a code of conduct in the parliament.
No, I didn't. And what
Is there
happened to that?
a code of conduct in the THA
I do not know.
for the elected officials? I
I do
don't
not
think there
know.
is at all.
Okay. However, I know there is a
But
type
they
of
talk
code of
about
conduct.
accountability to us. And they say to account to us, they have to account to the parliament. All right? That's how they tell us this system works. But if we elect them by voting, we should have the right to have them account to us directly. That is where the question of right of recall and that kind of thing comes about.
Yeah, but as you said earlier, was a thing discussed, and neither the PNM nor the UNC made any forward efforts to bringing it about. Well, I
Well,
mean,
then
you have
we
said
need to
that
push harder and make them bring it about.
you have sense. You know why that could never be a reality in Trinidad and Tobago, because we have misbehaving public officials
Well,
who
if
who
if
who
if
need
we
who
all think
need.
that is not possible to change anything, then we might as well just sit down here and take it. That's not what we should be doing as citizens. We have to demand change.
And again, I guess that raises the whole
I agree.
issue of, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm also a realist. There are things that I know that within the political sphere can be a reality if we push for it. And then also being a realist, I know that there are things that they will just never touch.
Well, so we just finished celebrating emancipation the other day, not so?
Yes, we did.
So if the slaves sat down and thought like you, that there are things that are beyond change, we would still be slaves today.
And I guess that may be part of the dilemma we face as people. We have lived to see sometimes our effort, you expend so much energy and effort and you're not seeing the kind of changes you wanted, you were hoping to see. But at the same time, we cannot give up. we have to keep pressing until it happens. Change is never easy, and change requires constant action. Otherwise, when the pendulum swings, it ends back up where it starts. So we have to constantly be agitating for change. And I believe that is where we as people need to take it upon ourselves truly, whether we consider ourselves grassroots, working class, professionals, the so-called 1%, as we like to say, we as people of Trinbago need to take it upon ourselves that if we are going to get any better, we need to agitate for it. And our constitution has gone as far as it could go. A constitution is a living thing. It needs to grow to accommodate the growth of a people that is happening in this era. We are governed by some archaic laws, and we're not agitating hard enough with on our leaders for the kind of change that we need to see. And we have settled by saying constitutional reform will take so long, and it would, but if we don't agitate, nothing is going to happen. And I guess that is why the Black Power movement was so critical and important in the 70s. And people were willing then to pay the price for change. Are we willing to pay the price for the change we need right now?
I think we still are. The question is that we need to organize. The question is we have to stop giving up our rights to politicians. The question, you see, if we go through this scenario, and for the last few years, the last 10 years, the PNM says, well, we have had so much consultation in Tobago. We consult with every tooth moon bagay, and we consult with up and down the place. So much so that we know, we the PNM, can say what the people of Tobago want in terms of self-government and autonomy and so on. But in Tobago, there is not a single one view about what autonomy means, about what it should mean, and so on. When Mr. Reginald Dumas, that brave soul who even took the cabinet to court, right up to the Privy Council, and established our right as citizens to challenge the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. When he was conducting consultations in Tobago, all over Tobago, up and down, you think the PNM had any real consultation compared to what he and others were doing? So what is the PNM speaking? Who are they speaking for? Are they speaking for you? If they don't talk to you, if they don't get your views, does an MP speak for you when they go in the Red House, or a THA representative when he go in the THA? Now there are some MPs trying to pass to get us to agree with them that we need to have a gun, and if somebody come in our house, we must shoot them and ask question and answer question later. That's what Winston said. So the government is trying to convince us that we don't need the police dealing with the criminals, that we must deal with the criminals ourselves. And they are calling that consultation. The PNM had a view of what autonomy and self-government meant, and they went around the country trying to convince everybody in Tobago of their view, and they call that consultation. What about the people who wanted federal arrangement? What about the people who wanted other arrangements? What about the people who say we want secession, which Fargo talked about since whenever that was? So the question is, has there ever been so any kind of situation where the people of Tobago had the options put to them and decided, well, what do the majority of us want? Can we vote on a referendum of what autonomy and self-government means? No, we don't. There's never been that. It is political parties coming to us. The UNC never understood the problem of Tobago and Trinidad. So in 2013, they came up with a law that could go nowhere. The PNM doesn't understand it. When I speak to people and talk about we are two nations, some people say, nah, nah, nah. There's a little video I saw recently about Trinidad and Tobago. And they went through the history of Trinidad, and then they went through the history of Tobago to show that the two histories are different. The land space is different. We speak different languages. We had different economies, right? That we have different cultures, which right now is being subsumed in one nasty culture of decay that is affecting both nations. But we are nations. We are people who have a history. Tobagonian, to be a Tobagonian meant something. It can't just mean that I'm not a Trinidadian. It means something. And the people of Tobago have a right, in my view, to have a right to secede. Not to say that they will secede or must secede, but unless you have that right, you will never have true autonomy in Tobago. And the people of Trinidad have to have a say in how this relationship works. You can't tell me there's a Tobago problem. If you and somebody married, that relationship is only for one person to have a view about. It can't be. So we need to have a broader perspective on these things and don't let the politicians tell us what to think. Let us think for ourselves.
Well said.
Hello?
Thank you. Who else do we
Uh,
have?
Yeah, I
Krishna?
want to ask brother Clyde there, right? Yeah, with the situation with the reform and stuff where they're going around asking for the change the laws and the things of Trinidad because the laws and things that it remember is like the I find it old and stuff and thing because it I find we should make our own laws and stuff and things to instead of taking up laws because I feel some of the laws that we have is like
Well,
from England and all that and we never
yeah.
change them.
Well, the thing is, the Constitution exercise at the PNM Mama guide the whole country and set up a committee to decide how to how to go about it, and then call a big special convention in Port of Spain, and everything their own committee proposed, they say we don't want none of that, right? But no government is going around asking the people what to do about the laws. They mention constitution reform, but they're not serious about it. So when it comes, that last exercise that the PNM carried out there, they set up a committee to basically come and ask us what we think. When the committee write out, well, this is what the people think. We agree with them on this, that, and the other. They call they call a convention and say we agree nothing what you say there. And that was the end of that. Will you forget that?
It's true.
How you
And
It's
we
gonna
take
true.
forget
And
it.
that? You can't forget that.
And we take it. And we
Waste
ain't saying
of
anything.
resources. Yeah, and made it a political football at the end of the day. And it's unfortunate. That's why we continue not getting what we need to get. I mean, take for instance, you brought up the stand your ground legislation that is currently in Parliament. And we have two MPs here. They have not brought the situation to the people of Tobago to say this is what is currently sitting in Parliament to be debated. Uh, Here are the issues coming down. What do you think? How do you want us to vote? Okay? Because the vote is not just about a party vote. How do you want us to vote? Instruct us. We are your MPs. Not that they go in there and between the two of them, they decide, okay, let's support the government because, we have that relationship. No, they should be hosting consultations with the people of Tobago discussing that key issue and determining how do Tobagonians want you to vote.
And you know
Okay?
what is ironic, Doc? The government is having their consultation in their various constituency, consultation of sorts in the various constituency in Trinidad.
Yeah. Okay. Arita.
Good night, all. I think they forget that democracy do exist, and we, the Democrats, have a say. And I don't think they want to accept that. They want a dictatorial type of leadership that they alone must be in control, despite of us putting them there.
Well, that is the point. They are not representative of an MP is not representative of his constituency. He goes there to represent his party. And that is the thing that makes them not accountable to us. They are accountable to the party. They're not accountable to you who put them there. If you are in Tobago, in a particular village or community, and you want to have a group of people representing that community, who selects the candidates? If you call a big meeting of the community people and you say, listen, we need 2 representatives, and the people in the meeting will say, I want to suggest so and so, I want to suggest so and so, and they will nominate people. But when it comes to nominating people to represent us in the THA or in the parliament, a party decides who goes there. We don't decide that at all. And then when we elect them, they do not represent us. Because, Doc, if the Tobago PNM politicians, MPs came to talk about this law, did they ever come to talk about anything else?
But I can't answer that question. I can't answer that question. But the same way, and I agree that the 2 representatives for Tobago should have some discussion with the people of Tobago. But to extend that thought in the PNM constituencies that they won, are they having those discussions? Should they be having those discussions too?
Of
Right?
course. Of course.
And
All
I don't think
MPs.
they are doing that. I don't think they are doing that.
All MPs in the lower house are called
All
parliamentary
MPs, but
representatives.
you can't judge your standard by what
No.
the people are not doing. You have to lift your own standards and do what is right. If they don't choose to do it, then that is their business.
Well, you see, I agree. I
The
agree.
elected members of the THA, is there any reason why they should not discuss that bill in parliament with the people in their districts?
I see no reason why they shouldn't.
Well, why aren't
I
they doing
want
it?
that.
All they want to talk to you
Yeah,
about is what they want to talk about.
yeah. Probably they see it as a government policy, government thing, and they allow the government to be the drivers of it. This is not to say that I agree with that. It will be certainly revolutionary if that is done, right? I get the
That is
views.
what
Now,
representation is about. So you have to represent, as somebody said once, the views of the people you're supposed to represent. That's the word represent. It don't mean you go and present your own views. You present the views of the people you are there on behalf of.
well, if all the persons that might be opposed to the current administration, they just sit back and they don't apprise their constituents about what is taking place and try to get from them their viewpoint, the party power will have their way. And the others just have their say, as the saying goes. Right? So it's not just our 2 representatives, why we could set a standard, right?
Mhm.
In terms of the people consciousness and the people awareness of what is going on and their need for their involvement in this whole
Yes.
exercise. I think it should be,
Yes.
eh,
But didn't the PNM political leader in Tobago, Mr. Dennis, just tell the whole country that since the PNM lost the election, that he has had consultation all over Tobago in every village and so and so, and all he come up with is they're gonna have candidates in the next election. That's what he had consultation about. Don't
let's
let
stop giving jokes now,
don't
man.
let
Let's stop giving jokes
politician
now,
make
man. Let's serious matter.
don't
Don't get jokes now.
no, that is not joke. I telling you serious thing. That we give up our right as citizens to think to politicians, then we give up our right to question things. And the minute we do that, we create the possibility of a Adolf Hitler or a Benjamin Netanyahu or a Trump or a Mussolini.
Brother
That is
Clyde,
what, the minute you stop questioning things and demanding your right to be heard, that is what you create.
Brother
So,
Clyde,
yes, sir.
I want to say that I agree with you on this point. We have become powerless, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, powerless because we essentially have given up our power. Back in 1970, as you would have mentioned, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago knew their rights, they knew the type of power, they knew the type of voice that they had within the political landscape. They knew this. What I was taught as a young lad growing up was that in the schools, they used to teach civics. And for some reason, Brother Clyde, they took that out of the schools. And essentially, what I believe it did, it took away the knowledge. And because the knowledge was absent, we lacked the understanding that gave us the power to know our rights, to know how far we can go, to know what we can challenge, and so forth. We, our challenge today is to retool, educate the population about civic matters so that they can understand how powerful they are and challenge the nonsense that we are seeing in the parliament today.
And what you have just spoken about there is political education. Civics in primary school ain't taking you that far. The fact is that you have to understand, I am a citizen, I have a voice, I have a right to express my views, I have a right to demand accountability from the people who are there supposedly representing me, not to the party, but to me, and so on. And we have to do that. We have to practice it. We we have not just given up our right, it has been taken from us because they have spent all the years since 1970 convincing us that we are powerless and the only people who have a right to speak in this society are people who are in either the PNM or the UNC and one or two other little parties on the side. We have a right to speak and we must exercise that right. If people in Tobago are so upset about what Mr. Benjamin being charged and so on, and the THA is doing nothing about it, what everybody going to do? Sit down and just fold their arms too, like the THA? You can't do that. When I was at the University of the West Indies in the 70s, in 1977, there was a strike on the university campus. You know what caused it? Excuse. There was nothing about negotiation or anything. A lecturer spat on a worker, and the campus was shut down from before Christmas to past Carnival. It was the longest strike in the history of the University of the West Indies. Because a lecturer, an Irishman, spat on a Trinbagonian worker in the physics department.
Which
So
campus?
Pardon?
Which campus?
In St. Augustine, boss.
Okay, okay.
The workers went on strike and the students went on strike in solidarity with them, and we shut down the campus for all those weeks. So the question is that what was involved here was the dignity of a worker who was spat on by a foreign lecturer in the University of the West Indies. Nobody taught us physics and all of that, civics and all of that to understand that standing in defense of the dignity of a human being was what we needed to do.
I would like to know what would happen today. How would our people today react to that situation? The generation of today, how would they
Well,
react?
look at the whole world is sitting down and watching Netanyahu slaughtering people, right? And we sitting down as though the whole world, we just numb, we just dotish. Where has our humanity gone? That is the issue. We cannot give up our humanity. The slaves never gave it up, although they were dehumanized to the worst extent. They claimed their humanity. That is what emancipation is. And I heard some discussion over the last few days since emancipation that people talking about African this and African. Who is people talking about how other races doing this and that and the other? In Trinidad and Tobago, since 1970 and Jack, who speaks for the Africans in this country? Who is defining the Africans for themselves? We have a whole set of people defining us. That we is criminals, we is bandits, we is this, we is that, we lazy, we this, we that, the other. Who is defining anybody for themselves? Nobody can define you. You have to, Tobagonians have to define themselves as Tobagonians, not as some people who support the PNM or who support the TPP or the PDP or what, but as Tobagonians, as the nation of Tobago. That is how you have to define yourself. And unless you do that, then you're going to leave it up to some politician to say, well, here now, this is what autonomy mean. This is what we need to have. And if we can get 6,000, if we can get 6%, we should get some more. Your nation doesn't depend on your percent. It depends on you having a respect for yourself, a definition of yourself, and taking charge.
Brother
Yes,
Clyde, how,
Aretha,
how
go
would we how would we be able to do that when we are divided amongst ourselves along party lines, along religious lines, and
Well
so forth?
then, well then say to
And
hell with the party lines.
also, um, Doc asks a question. So my answer to her question is they will take out their phones, they would film it, and then they would put it up on social media. That is how heartless we are uh, as a people. Some of us, that is.
But that is how we are
Um,
being trained.
right. Another thing to answer you, Brother Clyde, the reason why I asked the question, which campus, is because the university uh, doesn't only have a campus in St. Augustine. That's why I just asked.
I told you I was there, and I was there, and it is St. Augustine. It is not
Yeah,
Mona. It is not somewhere else that we think more militant than us. It is a
Jamaica,
group. It is a group of
Barbados.
people of Trinidad and Tobago. The workers organized in the union there. Not the lecturers. The lecturers joined in too. The students joined in, and we were all unified on the basis of defending the dignity of a worker. That is what we fought on. So it is possible. I lived through it. I was part of that. So I understand it can happen. And the minute I give up on thinking it will happen and trying to present views to people that are not the views that others want to impose on us, then I too will become a renegade to the cause of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I have come to Tobago. I have spoken about this Tobago-Trinidad relationship since 1971. I have come to Tobago. One time I came with my child, and we stayed in a hotel, and somebody meet me in Tobago and say, you know, tonight they have a discussion in the works building there. I leave my child with strangers in the hotel and came to that discussion to talk about the relationship between Tobago and Trinidad. And somebody asked me in the meeting, where you from? Trinidadian don't talk so. Because I am not going to be defined by no politician. I have a view that we are two nations, we have two histories, we had two economies, we had we have different languages. If what Tobago heritage means, if it does not mean that Tobago has a culture that is distinct from the culture of Trinidad. If it don't mean that, then what the hell is heritage? Just a thing to get some people to come and spend money? Then it's meaningless. It's like carnival. You want to have two
Mr.
carnival in Tobago. For what? Where's the meaning of carnival in October? Where's the history of that? Where's the evolution of that?
Mr. Weatherhead, what you're saying about Tobagonian culture versus Trinidad culture is not just Tobagonian versus Trinidad culture. While
I'm
I
not
was, I
saying
was
it
at
is versus. I'm saying Tobago has a history,
the
a
same,
culture. It is a nation.
right. While I was at Caville in Barbados, I remember distinctly lecturers telling me, all the Tobagonians normally come here and, he defined us as Olia. And the way he started to treat me, and I told him, no, I'm a Tobagonian with a difference. And there was a time I had to stand up to him, the dean, not for disciplinary action, but based on how I was being treated, because I was only the only student in my year for that particular course. And when I was leaving, the law faculty asked for me to come across to do law. And I laughed because I had to protest against where I was renting accommodation. And I'm saying to myself, if I didn't stand up, I might have been mentally ill by the time I come back from KFIL. And the same applies here. Whether you work somewhere and something happens to you, or you live somewhere and something happens to you, we, some, not all, some Tobagonians are afraid to speak out because we fear one, victimization, or we will look out of the ordinary. But I think self-awareness is important because, as you said, when that lecturer spat on that employee, everybody was self-aware that was disrespectful and stood up to it. We as Tobagonians here, we know what is disrespect, but we are afraid to speak out. And I often say, unless it happens to them and their family, nothing comes out of it. And we often say in Tobago, it's not me, so me ain't care about what happened there. And yes, it's a cultural thing, but I often have said I never lived during slavery. I was not born during slavery. But we have this generational thing, hush your mouth. And that is what is killing us as Tobagonians, hush your mouth.
And that is recent. And when the THA becomes your biggest employer and you lose your independence as people, that is one of the consequences. The fact is that Tobago people have a rich history of standing up for the rights of Tobago. You go come up from Belmana riots, come right up. I don't know since when Tobago people are not people who are presenting their demands and their needs in a way that is forceful and mobilizing the rest of the community to move with them. Why is Tobago? I remember coming in the 70s to do research on the history of Tobago agriculture and staying in a house opposite where Magdalena is there. A big white house is still there. And we were there for 2 weeks as students, going all over Tobago doing research. And we never even close our door whether we there or we not there in the house. So the social decay that is going on in Tobago is the enforcing on Tobago of the same nasty culture that is being enforced on us in Trinidad that is coming out of America. It has nothing to do with Trinidad and Tobago. It is alien to us. and we are being forced to submit to it, and we have to resist it. And that is the nature of the slaves, was to resist the dehumanization. We
Of
have to
course.
resist the dehumanization that we facing now,
Mhm.
because all you describing, sister, is that you are one person who respects your humanity,
Of
and
course.
you are prepared to defend it, and you have
Like,
to encourage everybody else to keep doing it. Be a
and you're
leader.
correct. Because
The
look,
other day somebody in Tobago is telling me, so what you think about so and some elected representative and something they do and what they do? I said, well, you asking me what I think for? You in Tobago, deal with the damn person yourself. You want me to deal with them?
like, I'm going through my personal situation at work, where I work. And it's not, I wouldn't say, people say, oh, it's a political thing. And I said, no, it's for who I am. Because prior to this secretary of where I work, a previous secretary evicted me out of my office, take all my cabinets. Personally, she did it. Put my things outside, put me in the open area. And I just tell her, listen, lady, me and care what you do. Once my contract get renewed and my salary don't stop, we don't have a problem there. And persons was at first was saying I was rude, but then after they said you were right.
Well,
Now when the person realized
you should have been a little more rude.
all
Resign your
right, I
job
was
and claim
I,
constructive dismissal,
well,
and
I
take
didn't know about
that
that.
person to court.
Well, right now I'm seeking legal action because I do intend to deal with THA soon, and I had to go to the Equal Opportunity Commission and this and that. And when I heard the definition of discrimination, and I said, but so I said, okay, but how are we defending public workers or even contracted workers? And I said, when person realize that you have the knack to do something, they are the, if you want to develop a country as you're politically elected to do, and you say we are here to develop Tobago, and you have 3, 4 employees who are saying, here, we are ready to push for Tobago's development. And you, I don't know what is the mentality of the politician where you're shutting down things that happening, things not going forward. And I wonder how do they sleep at night? Because as a politician, you're not there for 20, 30 years. You have to leave limit office. And when you do and you retire, are you going to sit down and say, you know, when I was there, I should have listened or I should have done that? And I'm saying the power that you get in your hands, you are there to help others and yourself because you will benefit in the long run. Right? And I'm just confused still today why employees are facing victimization for standing up, speaking out. And it's not just we have a lot of disgruntled public, not contracted, no public servants who are saying, I'm fed up, but I have to survive. And
Well,
that is the position that
because
these,
their union
mhm,
is not leading them, right? Mr. Duke
mhm,
was the head of that union.
uh-huh,
Yeah,
yes, the PSA, uh-huh,
right. The man he put to replace him at the head of the union is now the Minister of Labor, right?
uh-huh,
The woman who he put to replace the two of
pretty
them.
sure, uh-huh,
All she's saying is the government go give we 10%, right?
mhm,
You have an offer from the previous administration of 4% in one period and 5% in the next period, and that is 9.
yes, please, uh-huh,
But the UNC promising you 10,
mhm,
not even for the same 2 periods, right? And
mhm,
you so love the UNC that you
mhm,
not even telling your members, listen, you see them people they send home from CPEP, let we stand up in defense of them.
mhm, mhm.
Solidarity. The
Yes, yeah,
unions sing a song, Solidarity Forever. In the 70s and 80s, that meant something.
of course.
That
Immense strength.
unions used to take actions, not only in defense of their own members, but of any
Mhm,
worker anywhere, right?
mhm.
So the leadership in the trade union movement has become so narrow and self-centered and
Eroded
self-interested
it. Mhm,
that they no longer practice that. By the late 1990s, early 2000s, you know what union solidarity meant? That the executive of OWTU and a few executives from here and there will go and hold a little meeting and a march of executives and say that is the solidarity, or they issue a statement. Before that, all in the 1980s, you remember this country was shut down in the 1980s by the workers?
Mhm.
So the problem is not the people, the problem is the leadership we don't have. That is the
You're correct.
problem here.
And then when,
So,
when they reach halfway now, they turn and they say that the employees or the public servants not doing their work, right? And because it's like, to me, it's a massa with a whip just above the public servants, whipping them, whap, whap.
you're correct.
And one or two are afraid to stand up because he fear if he stand, obviously if he stand up, nobody gonna stand behind him too. And that
But
is a trend that they're
didn't the
correct.
court just say that the THA has to pay people, what is it, some $3 million or something like
Yes.
that for terminating them wrongly? Not so?
Yes, please, yeah.
And the THA learn anything from that?
Well, I remember the current chief secretary saying that contracted employees shouldn't feel or are not obligated their contracts being renewed. But I don't think he read the contracted guidelines for contracted employees. And I don't think he understood the law in detail. But that is a trend. Because I don't know how they give the power to secretaries to authorize the continuity of employment for employees. And I've heard an individual went through an experience where a secretary asked for that individual's appraisal to be done over because they weren't satisfied. And in so doing, they have given that person a 1-year contract. And I'm asking myself, how did the secretary reach to determine the quantity and the level of work and measurement to determine how to renew a contract? Because their function is just based on the directives
Well,
and the
ma'am, I could tell you,
recommendations.
I'm a past president of the PSA before
Uh-huh.
Jennifer Batiste and Watson
Uh-huh.
Duke.
Mm-hmm.
And Watson Duke never organized the contract employees in the public service. Never. Nor did Leroy Batiste, nor does Felicia, whoever her name is. The PSA has refused to represent the contract people in the public service.
Correct. Because that lawsuit
Right?
is based on
And
how
let
many
me tell you something, ma'am. The contract employees in the public service are workers. And if you go in the industrial court, look at the cases, so and so versus some PS or somebody in the public service or the THA, and look at the union. There's hardly a case. I think there might be two.
But the PSA
That the
represented
PSA is
them.
the union.
You're correct. You're
Right?
correct.
Almost all the cases are Bank and General, CWU, and this other union, all kind of thing.
You're
But
correct.
not the PSA. So the Public Service Association has failed to organize the people
Yes.
who are making up 70 to 75% of the
The
people you meet in
employment.
the public service.
Correct.
So
Correct.
the leadership has stopped leading. And the politicians are now leading and misleading the population, trying to convince you, you don't have no voice. Just leave it to
Yes.
we. We the people, we know everything.
Yes. And they
And
bring in their
that is
puppets too, They bring in their puppets. The politicians hire their puppets as well to guide the process to shut down employees as well. And that when persons become disenfranchised, that's how the public service is now becoming eroded. And we are currently facing brain drain. Because when you have persons in the 70s and 60s coming back to work, and then you have a period now where the younger employees now saying, we can't handle that story, they'll be leaving. And then we're having this big gap, and we're having issues with the development of the island and by extension Trinidad and Tobago.
correct.
But I think they agree a bigger problem, right? With this onslaught of contract workers. I understand that there are a number of vacancies within the public service, right? That are being filled, right? And they use that contract labor thing to get away from eventual pension payments and all this sort of a thing, right? And that, you brought in some loyalists, right? Well, if there's a change in leadership, governance, and so on, those people seem to stymie the progress of whatever the party might be doing. And nobody could tell me because I waited 8 years to get some gratuity money, right? And why? Because some little clerk, right, refused to write up whatever they had to write up and send it to the thing to get it done. So you can't tell me that that workers, right? They're all conscientious and doing their job and want to help one another, right? But Craig, you said something earlier, right? And I found very informative. You know, and the first goes like this: that we don't have, or we have leaders of blacks and not black leaders, right? And that, you know, we have become so individualistically materialistic people, right? That every is A for apple, B for back, and C for yourself. This is what we have become. Whilst other people
Correct.
seem to be uniting, right? I get it, and it is a sense of self-hate, right? We are ashamed of ourselves. We don't seem to want to help one another to progress, right? And
Correct.
anytime we seem to do that, they talk about race. When Rowley was in opposition, he's talked about affirmative action for Laventilla and those areas. And for me, there was a discrimination, and that is shut down, and he never did anything about it. He never did anything about it, not realizing that those people, in whatever situation, the environment, needed special attention, right? And then they try to disperse the thing and the thing, and they left the people. Why should people, so many, they've call it numbers, 10,000, 20,000, mostly African people, be struggling for a CPAP job? What causing that? Is that
And a,
all
dec-
we can qualify for?
and a
Right?
decent salary.
Well, let me say this.
Ah,
Let me say this to you, brother. Let me say this to you. You talk about people, there's vacancies in the thing and so in the service and so on, and you have all this contract employment. That have nothing to do with people wanting contract. It have nothing to do with pension costs. Because they're singing that pension cost story since 1970, late 70s into the 80s. They're singing that issue. How much billion we paying in pensions? How much billion we paying in pensions? Right? The issue there is that the politicians want the right to hire and fire. That's why Rowley, Terence Farrell,
Correct.
and others over the years and more recently have been saying what we need to do is get rid of the service commissions. Right? As president of the PSA, between when Pandey was there and when Manning was there in the 90s, both of them, I got the conference of the PSA to agree to a document proposing improvements to the disciplinary process in the public service, adherence to the timelines in the regulations, having a pool of investigators and not just ad hoc, you're just sticking somebody to investigate who can investigate. And you have standing tribunals and so on. They now have a few of them, right? And things like that. I put that to Pandey, I put it to Manning, and neither of them did anything because they're not interested in dealing with a public service that is better. They're interested in being a politician. I want to have the right to hire and fire who work for us. This is not America. We don't have no spoil system. That's not what we have here. But that's what the politicians want. And that's what they have made Tobago into. Why is the biggest employer in Tobago the THA? Why do you have CPEP in Tobago? Why you have URP in Tobago? Where's the point of that? Why in the regional corporations in Trinidad, you have to have a corporation man come in to cut the grass on my avenue here. And then the next couple of weeks, a CPEP man come in to cut. So why two or three different set of people have to come and do the same thing? Why? Because it benefits some politician some way. Because he feel if I get you 10 days, you will vote for me. And if we as people, whether we Indian, African, or what, reduce ourselves to accepting that that is what we worth, then we have denigrated ourselves. We have accepted what they tell us we are, and that is wrong. And I am not in this thing about we is one race and them is our next race and them that behave different, and oh, that is crap. We are human beings. We are Trinidad and Tobago citizens. We are members of this society. We are all equal, and we all have the same rights as everybody else. And that is what we are. And stop this nonsense about we Afrikaners be down we self. What nonsense is that? Do you know that the head of the public service, Reginald Dumas, was a Tobagonian African? You know the head of the central bank, Mr. Bob, was a Tobagonian African? You know that Lawrence Dupre come from an African family? Huh? So what we beating down ourselves for? Because we allow people to beat us down and we accept it? We must stand up for ourselves, everybody, regardless of your race or your creed or whatever. Understand, I am a human being. I demand my rights, which I am owed because I am human.
You know what I remember?
I also know that the persons on the slave plantations who used to beat you the worst was Africa, wasn't their own. I also know that.
And you know, plenty of them died for it. Eh?
But you know, I remember as a child, when I remember the URP system, I remember the water catcher, did this, the foreman did this. And I remember when you finish secondary school as a boy, or if you didn't finish secondary school, the first option was for you to go to the works department or agriculture department. And then thereafter, while you're there, you learn a little trade. Then you would have applied to go to John D. And the ones who did well academically, the first thing you did, you apply for the public service. And as soon as that stopped and the politicians got involved in that decision making of who gets into the system, I think they lost their function and role to know that, hey, we were only elected to deal with policies. And since these politicians stopped dealing with policies and the development of Trinidad and Tobago, you see how far we're going into multi-million-dollar contracts of CPEP and URP. And it's because the persons have not learned that here we need to educate ourselves. Because when you hear somebody working 20 years in URP and you're still depending on the URP and the CPEP salary. And I was a laborer in agriculture. I worked there for 4 years and I elevated into my certificate and then into a degree. And I remember when I was there, they were like, you going to university? And I said, I didn't come here to stay. And if I am one, but if we could help change the mindset of persons that where you are, you could become further. But because you are a easy fix and you can walk the morning, you know the morning walk story, little 2 hours, and then you're going to your little day walk. But we are saying THA is 70 or the public service is 70% of the employment. But when you look at the level of employment, it is deplorable because I'm surprised to see persons attending top schools and still is a clerk 1 and a clerk 2 in the public service. And I'm saying, but you had an opportunity to elevate yourself. What happened?
Well, let me ask you something, sister. Where's the Kendall Farm School?
Yep, and the CCC they're trying to close down and the youth camp. You're correct.
Huh?
Yeah, you're correct.
Where are all the agriculture stations that used to be all over Tobago?
True. Shut down. Vacant, abandoned, falling apart.
Where is Mr. Whitehead's fish processing facility that he set up in Tobago since the 1950s? Where is it?
Rotten down.
Huh?
Eroded. I think it eroded.
Huh? Where
Don't
is the
look at the abattoir.
the
Look
cherry
at the
nectar? You
Oh,
know
and
cherry
these.
nectar?
That was a private issue. The last time I was a child is that he would run into debt and he wanted a 1.2 million assistance from the THA.
You know, after I encountered cherry nectar in Tobago, a couple of years later, in the gas station right here in Takarigo, they were selling cherry nectar.
But the quality wasn't the same because the rights
Yeah,
weren't so something.
but it was there.
Yes,
Where are all
established.
those things?
Yeah.
Dr. Rowley fighting up to the Privy Council to pay $300 a
For
acre.
sheep. For sheep.
Well, it's
And Tobago had, in the 1970s, Tobago had more black belly sheep, Barbados black belly
Yes,
sheep
correct.
than
Yeah.
Barbados. Not so?
Because the sheep farm in Blenheim now
So,
has it diminished now to one of the code. They had 2 sheep farm production, one in Blenheim and one in Study Park. And they have shut down the one in Blenheim now and there's only one function. I
the
remember
the
500 sheep.
same thing
Correct.
up with a repo. When I was an agriculture student in 1975 to 78, there was a 200 head milking parlor in a repo. Right now, they get in land to some private company. That's what Rowley did.
But
So these politicians have basically reduced our country So a dependent set of people who they telling us all we worth is to get 10 days. And we have accepted that. Now the point is,
back the issue.
this issue with Benjamin, it happens. The
Yes.
THA is the employer. They so represent the people and love the people that they're doing nothing. Right? What's the difference between that and the fact that Tobago has moved from the food basket of the Caribbean to
The hungry
begging
basket.
people? I'm telling you, the food basket of the Caribbean,
Of course.
Tobago was that. You know, Tobago used to export root crops and things to Venezuela and all of the
Yeah.
islands and things.
Mommy said as children, they remember the family going down to Venezuela to trade. Mommy said that.
Right. So
And
I'm not
foods.
lying to people. That's why I said we
Yeah,
came there,
correct.
we did the research, we wrote a little booklet as agriculture students of the history of Tobago agriculture. Right? Tobago was that. But Tobago has been reduced to an island of beggars. Want to have 2 carnival. That is the height of your economic life. To have 2
I often
carnival.
say,
But it raises back the issue, if I could interject, and the need for community empowerment so that the strength of the Tobago economy should not rest in THA employment, but in the level of business activity that communities can generate. And that then speaks to the issue of private sector development so that we won't have to depend on employment coming from the THA. There are things that economic activity that could happen at the community level, and I would want to dare say in hope and beyond hope that the empowerment of the community in its purest sense then diffuses some of this issue of partisan political affiliation that dictates the pace of where we as people and individuals go. Because at the end of the day, the progress of the community is in the hands of the community people.
but the new trend of the community development is the nail technician and the stage building and the biggest bar operation. It's no longer feeling.
Beyond that, it's a matter of changing the mindset into productive type.
Which is hard.
If we, and I guess that is part of the engagement part of the public education and engagement that is our responsibility when we say we want to be public leaders and political leaders. We have to show and engage people in things that are far more than the 5 on, 5 off, 10 on, 10 off, in terms of what we are capable of doing. We have so many opportunities and potential. Look at the amount of fruit trees around the place, mangoes dropping left, right, and center, yet we do not have a juice processing plant.
A market fit as well.
But we are bringing in those same juice, mango juice, soursop, popo, from Indonesia, from the Asian countries, and we have the fruit trees right here. So it's a matter of organizing ourselves to do work that is beyond just cutting grass.
But Ms. Trotman, you know we have a mindset, a trend that is killing and licking up we Tobagonians. That mindset is bad mind.
Well,
bad mind is what is killing us, because if we unite and work in solidarity, we could take back, we could do what we used to do 20, 50, 60, what my mother used to speak about. My mother is 87, 89 this year. And I'm saying if we could get back to that, because I often tell people with land issues, long time is your grandfather, your grandmother land, and you continue and you plant up and you sell, and mommy save up a little 500, and when your Christmas comes, she say, look at a little something. That changed. Is a fight to put a concrete jungle and the guest hall and the apartments, and the food mentality changed. So all of us balling now because when we go in the grocery, the prices are too exorbitant. But what could we do? Because we never stood up and say, let me continue what Granny, and the same with the politician. They were saying, let me continue what Mr. Robinson started and what started in the 60s and the 70s. It's all about personal gain.
Yeah, but
and friends and family.
all those things have their place. What we now as
Have
a
to.
new generation need to do, harness, yes, some of the examples of the past, but
Mm-hmm.
build it around some of the
Mm-hmm.
modern opportunities that we
Mm-hmm.
have now. Because the principles can still work, but it works around a different economic engine to drive us. And I think that is where the change of perspective, the change of vision needs to happen.
Miss
Okay, and
Trotman,
Rita,
Miss
Ole on
Trotman,
fire tonight.
can, can I ask a question to
Sure,
Miss
go ahead.
Trotman, Andy?
Yes, yes, you may.
Certainly.
You said just now the expression was something. As far as I could remember, since a little boy come into Tobago to know, the
Mhm.
expression I remember was Lenhan.
Yes, Lenhand,
So
Correct.
where
there's
that
another
going?
Correct.
Where
one.
that going?
That going in the
And that's
blossom,
what
the
and
flowers.
that's what I mean. All the principles like those can come back, but it can be built around a type of machinery that is now in keeping with our era, not just our grandparents' era, but the Lenhan, there was another thing, something basket. There was another kind of thing. Those same principles we can put to work along productive enterprise. And I will pull from what Dr. James liked to say, high value capital services. Services that produce other services that produce other goods. And it's not just built into just pure consumption alone, but built into products and services that can create other products and services.
And Ms. Stratman, to those products and services, we could boost tourism because
Of
many
course.
persons, we travel to Spain, we travel to Mexico, we travel to ancient cities of the world. And when we go to those ancient cities, I'm sure many of us would be shocked. It's the same wood and the mortar design and the same kind of way of style of cooking. But I remember going to a restaurant in Canada, I laugh to be served on a piece of wood looking like a mango bamboo, not bamboo, but a mango piece of wood. And
That is
the restaurant, it was expensive. And I'm saying we have the same mango in my mind. And I remember about 20 years ago buying a mortar, came from China for $10.
Mhm.
And I said, but what happened to the mortar? Because joinery going out of style now, where the upholstery and the men cutting style to do certain things first. And I said, if we go back to that historical context and bring it right back, because yesterday I was watching a video of wonders, cities of wonders throughout Europe. And you see how I may laugh about how far people travel just to go and see ancient way of cooking and conventional way. And our conventional food, because if you realize people are gravitating to our conventional food, which we now converted into harvest. But we could market back how traditional way of cooking tom tom and the what mommy the concote because you ask young people nowadays about concote, they don't know what is concote. And some food, dirt oven, when they build one on the shore park, I hear built a concrete and it can't bake properly. And I'm saying, teach your children the history, as Mr. Weatherhead said. You shut down the Kendall Farm School, you shut down this, you shut down that. So we can't go any forward. But they think going forward is the only economic development is investment. And in those countries, when you look at Spain, imagine you paying money to go on a boat in Venice, Italy, just to go across a river. So we can't do the same in Tobago here.
And as someone shared with me recently, it's about building tourism around our lifestyle, around our cuisine, around
Indeed,
who
indeed.
we are as a people. It is
Mm-hmm,
sharing that. It is
mm-hmm,
building an industry around that, not just around
mm-hmm.
tall buildings and whatever,
Yes,
but around the people, around how
yes.
they live, how they eat, how
Mm-hmm,
they relate, how they work, how they live.
mm-hmm,
It's about building it around our lifestyle.
mm-hmm. 15 years ago, I went to St. Lucia. I'll never forget this place called Dennery. Driving on our way to Soufriere, there was a rare dish or meal I had, which was pounded cassava with sugar and coconut, baked in a dirt oven. When I ate that morning, the entire day I wasn't hungry. The night we go to a restaurant, I'm not hungry. I said, well, full, so I thought I was sick. Forgot that I had that cassava and just one I had. And I'm saying it's so powerful, cassava, sugar, and so forth is. And I said, but where we have cassava back home, we have the same ingredient, coconut back home. And I said, but look what we reached to. And that is in my mind. So when somebody say I go in St. Lucia, I'll say when you pass January, try that. And persons come back and tell me, Arita, the thing tastes so good. And I'm saying, but we have similar food that could fool you for the whole day too. And you're right. If we boost that, we reach far, but we're not boosting that. We're boosting the bikini style now for the Tobago Carnival, right? And that's our way of boosting.
I know we have gone off topic a little bit, but I think what this
Sure,
has
sure.
proven, what it has, no, but what it has proven to us is that as a people, we need to be, if we are to press forward, we need to understand what it would require of us who are putting ourselves up as potential leaders of a society, that there's truly a great responsibility placed upon us, and we owe
Yes.
it to the people we say we
True.
want to serve to put our best foot forward in terms of our capacity, our capability, our
Yes.
knowledge, and
And
I would like to think our heart for truly wanting to see development and betterment for all people, regardless of religion, political affiliation,
please.
gender, whatever. At the heart of it is
And
building a better Tobago for all.
correct. And looking at this,
What you're saying, Kay, actually, is not gone off or you haven't strayed. It actually overlaps with what we were speaking about earlier. But I have a question for Brother Clyde.
Yeah.
What can we do to find the courage that we once had? Because all I'm hearing is that this is our problem. These are the challenges. We once had the courage that dealt with those things when they arise and we put them back in the place. So my question is, what do we do to raise back the courage? And not only to raise it back, but to hone the courage again that would bring us back to what you are saying, Brother Clyde. We need to mobilize people, mobilize citizens in different spheres so that they can take back the power that is rightfully given to them to chart their own economic future. Because
Well,
without that, we would be having these conversations over and over again. And I am saddened to hear that you have started this kind of discussion here, even here in Tobago, since 1971. That hurts me. When you said that, that pained me. Like if I get side stitched for the whole day.
I
first thing first, in that capacity, I work in the same department, so I can't say much or division. First thing first, had they hired a Tobagonian, that wouldn't have been the headline news with Mr. Benjamin, and I seized with that.
well, I hear the brother ask a question just now. I just sat here and listened to courage. I just listened to vibrancy, enthusiasm. I just sat here and listened to people understanding themselves. And all you all need to keep doing is not just talking to yourselves, but to talk to others. It doesn't take, you can't go and build a mass movement by getting 10,000 people to come one time. We're not in that era. You have to take these discussions that you are having, you have been having, out into your communities, into your workplaces, wherever you're working with people, wherever you're interacting with people. Take those same sentiments and deal with it and encourage one other person, two other people to do the same thing. Organizing is a hard thing to do, but it has to be done. And that is the point. Tobago is a place of history. It is a place of taking initiative. It is a place of many, many accomplishments that Tobagonians need to remind themselves of. So when you say that if a Tobagonian was in the position and not Benjamin, that wouldn't happen, are you saying that all the people who killing one another in Tobago is only Trinidadians? The fact is our society in Tobago, in Trinidad, has decayed because there's a decadent culture imported from North America that has been thrown on us since the 1970s. Do you know that the use of drugs on a mass scale, marijuana, MX, and so on, all started in 1970? Because that was part of the reaction to the actions of the people in 1970. How do we get them to never think about rising up again?
Is that the Bohemian Rhapsody era?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
When
I'm
the
sure
rock,
when
the
that
rock
may have
concert in the late
no,
60s.
they used to they also used to they introduced having these things they call Woodstock
Yeah, rock concert, yeah,
in
Bohemian.
Maraval and thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but they introduced drugs since then, and that was a deliberate move on the part of the state. Apart from killing people enough, you say, well, the rest of them, how we gonna stop them from thinking about changing? Let me put their mind on something else. So we start off on drugs. Then we end up now with gangs and killing one another over drugs and nonsense. So they have distracted us. They have moved us away from ourselves, and we need to reclaim ourselves. That is what you, as younger people in Tobago, you need to do that. I remember the the entrance to Chauvin Road. Hmm? What they have there now, a big concrete building on the eastern side of the corner. And also, I remember that entrance to Chauvin Road on the left side. There were tall coconut trees and so on. And there were cattle there that people were rearing from the village right there. And the coconut trees were like the posts that they were running the barbed wire on to keep the cows in the different pastures and so on. Where Magdalena Grand, I remember huge numbers of cows grazing there. And let me just point out the two sisters there. I went to Antigua in the late 1970s, early 80s. And you see these resorts. I sat on a beach with my friend, a colleague of mine who was a fellow student in agriculture. And I watched 13-year-old girls on that beach trying to sell themselves to the white tourists in Antigua. That is what resort tourism is about. And when I came to Tobago a few years ago, and I sat in the airport waiting on a flight, and I saw this white couple with their daughter come and sit down to eat. And they had this little Tobago black boy who obviously they hire or whatever to be with their child or to be with all three of them, I don't know. It just reminded me of what I saw in Antigua years before. That is what Tobago has become. And you cannot accept that as a people of such a proud history as the people of Tobago. If people want to talk about Tobago heritage, talk about the real things of Tobago, not about nonsense. Talk about carnival that have no roots. When they started this October carnival, I said, what is the root of this carnival? It has none. It's like Jamaica carnival.
But I thought it would have been the conventional carnival, the Dame Lorraine and those things there. When I
No, no,
heard of the
no.
launch,
That they don't even want that in Trinidad. They put
no,
that on a carnival Monday morning. That is the segment where you end up right now.
but
Traditional
that was
carnival is gone. Because
right.
carnival is simply a festival of debauchery that they are telling
Mhm.
us that is what the people want. Everybody ass outside.
Yeah.
Eh? Look
'Cause when
at
I went to couple,
Barbados. A friend of mine from Barbados sent me some video
correct. Mhm.
from Barbados Kadooment this week. Same thing. Everybody with their ass outside, and that
Correct.
that that is that is
When
not
I went,
Barbados. That is
correct.
not us. That is
Mhm.
not Tobago. That is not Trinidad. That is not our carnival.
Well, that is
So
the
we have
influence that
allowed
you were speaking
people
about.
to impose these things on us, and we cannot continue. We have to keep resisting it.
It calls for people to know themselves. Really calls for people to know themselves. Dr. Angus, we take over your program.
Sorry about that. Good night.
Well, you know, it was
NK,
such a
all
pleasure.
spicy tonight.
It
All
was
on
such
fire.
a pleasure to just
Sit
sit
back.
and take it in, because oftentimes I keep hearing my voice over and over again. So I just allowed you all tonight, and let me tell you, I'm so proud of you all. You're so expressive, and you brought a lot of, thought to the table. And, we started with one topic, but it really sparked, many discussions, interrelated, but certainly in different ways. And so I really want to thank you all for fully contributing tonight, just unleashing yourselves and being that expression, and you know, just sharing your thoughts with us. Clyde, I also want to thank you. I mean, you are just,
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. You provide
A
every
walking encyclopedia.
walking encyclopedia, and you're able to put forward and give clarity to that issue. And the
Yeah.
fact that the THA cannot afford
Just stay
to
silent.
just sit down and do nothing, because it is tantamount to a dereliction of duties. And therefore, you are saying that, in the terms of wellness and social protection, that you're really not into protecting the public interest and the public confidence and the public trust within you. And so, but on the other hand, you recognize the fact that the gentleman still does have some rights inside
Yeah.
of that. So
Uh,
I think we're able to bring clarity to this
Yeah.
situation.
we are
And I
we are
want to
all we are
thank,
all human beings, and just being human, we have rights,
yes,
and we must respect that in everybody. The people
absolutely.
of Tobago, I keep saying, have a rich history. They have to grab back that history and act on it. Don't let the politicians define you. Define yourselves. And
Um,
if you become involved in politics, some of you who are there, become a different kind of politician.
Yeah.
That's
Correct.
what we need.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we need.
Dr.
We need that
Dr.
all over
Angus,
this country.
I
Dr.
agree.
Angus,
Yes, Akil.
yeah, before we go, I believe that we should do one thing, and that is to thank Sister Arita for having the courage in the face of office eviction, ridicule, embarrassment. What she would have regaled us about uh, earlier on in the conversation deserves us to be encouraged by it. Because in this space, especially in the THA, everyone is looking out for themselves and everyone is coward. We're behaving as though whatever the politicians say, we must just do. And we must cower in fear because our jobs are at stake. Clyde mentioned something about sacrifice earlier, and that is so important. Sister Arita demonstrated that she would, sacrifice herself and stand up and with the courage to say, okay, I will not take this lying down. So I am just saying tonight, all of us should be encouraged by her courage and her bravery here tonight. It is good, it is refreshing to see that there are some people in this space still holding on to the traditional or true values that makes us Tobagonians. Thank you.
True Tobago resilience. Thank you for that, Akil. So yes, thank you, Arita. Special thanks. Thanks to Kay,
Most welcome.
to Patrick, Keyshawn, Akil. Did I miss anyone? The contributors tonight? Who else contributed tonight? Yeah, I think I got everyone so far. Yes. Thank you all. I know we had some who actually sent messages. Renison Kwashi, thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you, Clyde, for coming and sharing with us. Always ready, always able. Thank you so much. Okay. So, guys, we look forward to a discussion next week. I'm hoping that we have Dr. Vanis James, who will discuss um, the issues of um, the tariffs that have been um, instituted on the Caribbean and how it affects, how it's expected to impact the national economy on a whole and even Tobago. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. And additionally, on Wednesday next week, please, we're having the discussion at the Scarborough Library, and that is on with Dr. Vanis James discussing the National Economic Review. So please come out in your numbers. For I think I have put that. I will put it in the chat, the larger chat, uh, for the flyer for you to RSVP if you're coming. But please come out. Let's come out in our numbers. Clyde talks about standing up as Tobagonians, and it is about, continually educating ourselves such that we feel that we could contribute to the larger discussion. So let's come out in our numbers, okay? So, and that will be on the Wednesday the 14th. So thanks again, everyone. I know we have gone way over time tonight, but that tells you about the excitement in the discussions that we were having. So thank you. Look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
you
Good
next week.
night.
Most
Good night,
welcome and
everybody.
thanks.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.